test itself, it's going to be a midterm. It's going to be 41 questions. You'll have enough time to get it completed. You'll have at least an hour. The online version will close out. I've got some folks taking a distance, and theirs just shuts down at 1 hour. So when we're talking about, everything just by the nature is going to be multiple choice. Even there's a few even true false built in there, but don't get too whatever. Do take it fairly seriously because it's fairly challenging. A lot of people don't do as well on it as they wanted to, and I think a lot of that is they don't, look at the review or talk about the review or take to heart, spend the time. So there's certain things like preparing resumes and things like that obviously are not going to be testable, and some of those other items are not a super big deal. But what I will talk about tonight is kind of the meat of the course. Make sure this thing's rolling. Whoops. Did it go? I want to make sure this thing's rolling. Yep, everything's working perfect. Sorry for the delay. So we talked about it just a second ago in terms of inflation. If there's high inflation, and you say you have $100 in the bank, years from now you'll still have $100, but what can you buy with it? And that's the real problem. It doesn't reduce the amount of money you have. It just reduces the buying power of it. And they're actually talking about now where they may even introduce negative interest rates because they're still trying to stimulate the economy. So they lower interest rates. The Federal Reserve will lower interest rates. But in that kind of case, you would literally deposit $100 and get $90-something back. I mean, that would be pretty screwed up. But they have done that in Japan, and they've done it a few places in Europe. So, but what they're trying to do is keep people from hoarding money. But anyway, the big thing to know about inflation is the money's going to stay the same. It's just the buying power that's going to be reduced. There'll also be a question in there that's more of like a basic economics kind of question in terms of say, buying a house. There's always going to be people sort of on the margins that just maybe can't buy a house because maybe if interest rates are higher, or they can't buy as big a house, or they have to stay in a rental situation because interest rates are too high. But if interest rates lower down, say they drop to 2.5%, there's a few of those people that are going to come into the market. But what's that going to do to housing prices? The actual price. Let's say you're selling a house for $300,000, but now all of a sudden there's many more buyers who come into the market. You're in a seller's market. You'll be able to get top dollar for that home, and especially if there's someone who's buying it on payments. The affordability. Let's say they can afford $1,000 payment, no more, no less. Well, as the interest rates go down, with that $1,000, they can potentially buy a house now. So it is typically going to result in higher prices if interest rates go down. So things like that, and it has to do. It's just basically supply and demand, but the demand is going to be higher when interest rates go lower. So another question on supply and demand, so you'll know those. In fact, I already talked about this one too. When I say the Fed, this is important because it's just kind of general information. You're going, why did the rates change? Why did the stock market go in the tank today, or did it do well? There's different things that affect, say, stock prices and economic prices, and it's not all the companies. A lot of times it's the policy that the Fed establishes, and the Fed is the Federal Reserve System. So it's like a pseudo government thing. It's they try and maintain a little bit of independence, but they get together, and there's a lady, Janet Yellen, who you may hear that name, not important, but what you do need to know, though, is when you listen to a financial show, because even things like CNN that are kind of dumbed down will even refer to the Fed. But if you're listening to somebody like, say, Cavuto or something like that on Fox Business, he'll definitely talk about the Fed because he knows he's dealing with a more financially literate kind of crowd. So you will see, remember when we were talking about some of the savings products like 5-year CDs and things like that, they weren't great interest rates, but if they went for a longer term, say like where you had to tie up your money for 5 years, you gave up some liquidity, but you actually were able to get a better interest rate, and that's pretty common. If you're able to, if you're doing just short-term loans, you're probably not going to get as good an interest rate. But if you give up a little bit of liquidity, you can generally get a better interest rate, earn a better interest rate. We also talked about, say your goal is to, save 10, 15% of your income and put it into some sort of savings. What you do in that case is that 10 to 15%, that's kind of an opportunity cost. By saving that amount of money, you may not be able to, go to Starbucks, every single day, or you may not go out to lunch every day of the week. And so, but if you do, that opportunity cost of going to Starbucks is going to keep you from establishing your savings account. So it's all about trade-offs. Everything has got a trade-off. It's what you give up when you're making a choice, basically. In terms of some of the career stuff we talked about, you may find that you're more qualified for certain positions based upon your aptitude. Some people are mechanical. They have an aptitude for mechanical stuff. Some people are clerical. I'd be hopeless at that kind of stuff. I'm more of a big picture, but accountants and stuff, they need some attention to detail, which maybe I lack. Anyway, so I would say that's not an aptitude that I've got. Also, there's some things with technology. If you wanted to be, say, a bank teller, not that a lot of people don't aspire to that, or a draftsman, or a modeler for commercial products, any of those things, travel agent, those are industries that are becoming pretty much automated, and so the technology is definitely changing. Those jobs are going away. But if you're somebody who's, say, like a web designer or something like that, those jobs didn't exist 15 years ago, and now, IT and some of those other sectors are big. So when you're looking at that kind of stuff, look at the role technology can have, because it can, create and get rid of jobs. Cafeteria style plans. We're going to talk more about healthcare things, but I've already kind of mentioned this before in terms of. Oh, also, let's pass these around. I need to be holding these back. Yeah, I should have enough. If not, we'll come up with means. It's just for the attendance. So cafeteria style plan. So the old days when you go to work for Ford or GM or somebody, and they're like, okay, this is our health care plan, this is our pension plan, here you go. You're just a generic kind of worker. Now, it's not like that. You walk in, and a lot of times it has to do, it's a good thing, bad thing. Some people have a spouse that has medical insurance. Do you need 2 of those? No, you just go with the better one. So a cafeteria plan, what that means is when you walk in sort of the first day, the HR people tell you what the options are, and you pick and choose. It's like a cafeteria. You put on your tray what you want. You might want dental insurance. You might not. So the last 3 of you just rip off a sheet of paper or do something, or even if you want to give them half of one. All I need is just something, and you can just kind of put your name on it just so it's really when I do the what do you call it, the end of the term. Basically what the thing was, I'm just looking for input back, but it's what are some of the advantages between buying and renting a home. So anyway, cafeteria style plan is a good thing, but it's incumbent upon you to kind of know what you're doing. And a lot of times those options for retirement plans are irrevocable. I know, for example, the last time I did this with UAA, when I went, full time a few years back, and you go in there and you opt for your retirement plan, and after 30 days, that's the one you got. There are no changes. So it just means that if you're brand new to a company and you know nothing about personal finance type stuff, you can kind of sabotage yourself. They usually have what they call an open season once a year, where they allow changes for medical plans and things like that. But again, you're better off knowing what you're doing beforehand, knowing what's important to you in terms of coverages. But anyway, that concept is called the cafeteria plan. When we're talking about financial type things with taxes, you're looking at different investments. So if I say I've got a tax-exempt investment or a tax-deferred investment, those are completely different things, right? Anything that gets me away from taxes is a good thing. But tax-exempt means that it's tax-free. There's no taxes to be paid on this ever. A tax-deferred investment is like a 401k, an IRA, something like that. That means, okay, I don't have to pay taxes on it right now. I won't have to pay taxes on it until I retire. So you're just deferring it. You're postponing the taxes. So, but if you got a choice of two investments, one's exempt and one's deferred, you definitely take the exempt one. I talked about aptitudes in terms of abilities for doing different jobs. Also expect to be able to perform a calculation regarding, say, a benefit is given to you, and they say, we're going to give you a car, and if you didn't have this car, you'd have to use your own personal car. Let's say this benefit is worth, basically $500 to you. What is that really worth to you? It's if you had to buy a car, if it truly was going to cost you $500, it's actually worth that $500 benefit to you is worth a bit more, because you really need to take in, let's say, $600, because part of that income is going to be taxed. You know what I mean? For you to end up with $500 of cash to take to the dealership, you need somewhat more. But anyway, that's going to be based upon your tax bracket. So you can do that calculation, and you'll need to be able to do that. So anyway, the big picture on this is, let's say they're giving you, say, a $500 tax benefit, or a $500 value type thing, and you're in whatever tax bracket. What is that really worth to you? So be able to do that equation. You've seen them in your homework examples a little bit. We talked about tax deferred. That's going to be taxed at some time in the future. We talked about tax exempt. Yeah. So again, that equation, if you're given a benefit that has a certain value associated with it, be able to calculate what it would cost for you to actually come up with that same amount of money. So again, using that $500 example, if they're giving you a place to stay that's worth $1,000, that's actually worth more than $1,000 to you. The benefit to that, because if you had to go out and pay $1,000, that would be an after-tax money. We know about fixed and variable expenses. So fixed expenses are things like, rent, car payments, things like that. Variable expenses would generally be, items like entertainment, perhaps some component of food. There's some that, there's always going to be a fixed and a variable element to it. But restaurants for meals and the amount of your savings, you should try and have a certain amount, but you would not necessarily classify that as a fixed expense. You probably know that most Americans don't do a real good job of saving. That's just a fact of life. So as a whole, and it's actually getting a bit worse. If you're, going to invest money in a tax-deferred account, like let's say an IRA or a 401k, that will again reduce your tax load somewhat. Let's say you're making, $100,000 a year, and you allocate, say, $20,000 to a 401k plan. That means your new income is only going to be only $80,000 of your income is going to be taxed. And so, let's say you're in a 25% tax bracket. That extra $20,000 is going to go straight into your retirement savings, and you aren't paying, in this case, that $5,000 of tax on that money. Not now, anyway. It's just deferred. You will pay it sometime in the future. You'll be calculating tax rates, and that's just easy. I mean, that's if I give you a certain taxable income and a total tax bill, you can divide that out and find what percentage you're paying. What that'll give you is an average tax rate. So, average tax rate is pretty easy to calculate. The concept, and we won't get into it too much here, but you know what a marginal tax rate is, right? The tax system is progressive. So at the low income levels, let's say, you probably know better numbers than I do, but let's say, the first $40,000 may only have a tax rate of, say, 10 or 15%. And then that next marginal rate from, say, 40 to 60,000 may have a 25% tax rate. And then from, let's say, 60 to 80,000 may have 28%. Anyway, it's going to go like that. But the reason why I'm not giving you hard and fast numbers is it depends on what your filing status is. What the numbers I just gave you probably are for somebody who's single. A married person, now two people with a combined income, those numbers are going to be higher. But anyway, that's how marginal rates work. If somebody says, I've got a 28% marginal tax rate, that does not mean you pay 28% on your, let's say you're making $100,000. You're not paying 28% on that whole $100,000. You're only paying 28% on the income that's in that margin. So let's say from 80 to 100,000, you're paying 28% on that income. And then on that 60 to 80,000, let's say you're paying 25%, and then that lower of it. So if you did all that math, you'd realize your average tax rate across that whole span, across the whole 100,000 is probably, 18%, something like that. Numbers would just be rough, but they're going to be somewhat lower. Reduction of taxable income when you're doing taxes. One of those things is exclusions. So you've got, it talks about a reduction in taxable income, and some of the answers would be portfolio income. Obviously, income's not going to reduce the amount of tax you're going to pay. Passive income, that's income, and earned income, that's just normal wages. Anything you do in terms of income, raising your income, is going to raise the amount you're going to pay in taxes. So you'll be able to get around that one. We talked about when you're doing your taxes, there'll be a standard deduction, or in most cases, and if you're within a few years, you'll probably not take the standard deduction. What you'll be doing is you'll actually itemize your deductions. Your itemized deductions will end up being generally more than your standard deduction. Well, if you're going to if you're going to itemize your itemized deductions will be more than the standard deduction. And what you do on that is it's you're able to deduct that from your gross income. So all your things, such as professional publications, searching expenses for a new job, things like that are all spelled out in the tax code. You'll itemize all of those and you'll collect them up, and that total amount, those itemized deductions, will be reduced from your gross income. You'll get your adjusted gross income. Not go any further than that. Leave it there. So, a tax credit. A tax credit is a great thing. You actually, let's say you get a $200 tax credit. That's $200 off your tax bill, right? But if somebody says, give us $200 for this charity, it's tax deductible. Ew, that's not as good. That means you get to reduce your income by $200. But if you're in a 28% bracket, that's only, $56? Yeah, $56 worth of benefit, because 28% times $200. So it's a big deal. You'll see solar energy maybe. You'll see a lot of things maybe in D.C. because they're connected with politicians. But anyway, they'll have tax credits. You'll see tax credits when you're filing things. But your charitable type things will be tax deductions, and so it's not the same. If you give somebody $1,000, it's not $1,000 off your taxes. It's $280 off your taxes. Let me see. Capital gains. You have different kinds of income. Earned income is like wages, things like that. And then you have capital gains. Capital gains are, let's say I buy some stock, for $10 a share and I sell it for $20. That $10 per share is capital gains. It's taxed at a lower rate because they want to encourage people to invest. It's not taxed at the same rate. So this is all that drama with Warren Buffett, where he's claiming that his secretary pays a higher tax rate than he does, because his secretary, she's taxed on her income and he's taxed on his investments. But you could make a pretty strong argument that the money that's used in those investments has already been earned, already been taxed once. And so if you tax investments at the same rate as income, it's a double hit. Anyway, just know the concept of what capital gains are. We talked about, generally, if you want higher returns, you're generally going to give up some liquidity. You're not going to have rapid access to your money. The investments like savings accounts, checkings accounts, where you can go in there and grab the money right now, they generally don't pay very well. And from a bank's perspective, they would prefer to have your money and be able to make loans and have some stability, so they'll offer you a higher rate for less liquidity. If a bank says we have a free checking account as long as you have a minimum balance, there's nothing free about that. Again, there's that opportunity cost of that $500, which you're getting no interest on, generally, if that's the case. I mean, if they're offering you interest on it, then maybe it is free. Maybe it's actually a little positive. But if it's you got to keep a $500 minimum balance in here, we're not paying you any interest on it. It's getting eroded away by inflation. It's not free. So, be able to do one of those calculations where you can find out, say, the true value of investment. Let's say I'm going to pay you 6% interest, right? And you got $100. Well, let's say, just say $100. 6% interest. You're going to be making 6% per year. But guess what? That 6% is income, and that 6% is going to be taxed. So you'll want to multiply the tax rate on that to see what the true yield is. The way this would become interesting is if you're comparing two types of investments. Let's say there's a tax-free municipal bond. Most times municipal bonds are tax exempt. So let's say it's paying 4%, and you get another loan that's just a fully taxable standard type of not loan but investment. Let's say it's paying 6%. How do you compare those? You've got to know what your tax rate is, and then multiply that across and come up with the true rate of that. So again, you know how to do that. That basically 1 minus 0.28. If you're in 28% tax rate, that'd give you what, a 0.72. You multiply 0.72 times 6, and there you go. So let's just call it 0.7. 0.7 times 6 is 42. So that's 4.2% is what I'm actually getting. The other one's at 4. I'm better off with the other one. But anyway, you would have access to a calculator, and you could do the real math there. You'll have access to a calculator in the for the exam purposes. So I don't care whether it's a phone or what you got, but it's not going to be super heavy math, but you can use a calculator. We talked about open-end and closed-end credit. So closed-end credit is something like a home loan, a car loan. You start paying it, and you finish paying it, and then it's done. Your association with those people is over. On open-ended credit, that's like a credit card. In some cases, even a line of credit. But we'll keep it easy. Just go with like a store card or a regular credit card, where you pay some on it, you charge some on it. There's not like an open and closing date. There's not like a fixed payment. Maybe minimum payments, but anyway, it's not as constrained as so open-end and closed-end credit or those type of things. Other things you talk about, a line of credit, that's a form of open-ended credit. Sometimes you might do a line of credit with a bank where you're going to be, pardon me, you usually see it in business type things, where you're going to be making loans, and do you want to go in there and specify exactly what it's for each time? They'll generally just give you a line of credit. Credit card loans, open-ended credit by its definition, but closed-end credit is usually for auto loans, stuff like that. What's the difference between using a debit card and writing a check out of your account? Really nothing. Especially now when they scan your checks in. There used to be a notion of where they played a float, where you could write a check, and you had a couple days till that check cleared. Now they generally put them through a reader, and boom, that comes out of your account right then. But there used to be, because I was flying when I was younger, and I knew guys who flew checks around. It would fly checks from one bank to wherever. And it made sense for the banks to actually get them there by, personal courier, because they'd get that money in their accounts. Now it's all done electronically. But the big thing for you is, if you're using a debit card, generally a debit card won't go through if you don't have the funds in the account. But if you aren't keeping track of your debit cards and you write checks in addition to that, that's where you get into big trouble. Because now you start writing hot checks, bouncing checks. Do you ever want to co-sign a loan? No, not generally. I mean, there may be an exception out there, but I'm not thinking of it. It's you are on the hook for the loan, and you're probably not the person getting the mail right off, and you have the full responsibility. And then when the thing goes to collection, you're the person that I'm coming to. I would not waste my time with the person who, was the originator on the loan, because they defaulted. They're a proven deadbeat, and you were proven to have the assets to co-sign. So generally don't do in terms of being denied credit, even if you kind of have an inkling that, yeah, maybe I wasn't eligible for this. Anyway, get a credit report. Like I say, you can do it. Well, you can do it every time you get denied credit, and then you can also do it 3 times a year on your own. So, again, if you haven't pulled a credit report on yourself, I would go ahead and do it. Just take a look and close out any extraneous accounts and do all that stuff. But yeah, so you can call them credit agencies, consumer bureaus, whatever. Same. Transamerica, Equifax, and Experian. I'll leave one out. Yeah, that's generally the 3. So let's say you go to the bank and you say, I want to borrow $10,000, and I just, I got some things to do or whatever, and you just get a signature loan. You haven't offered any collateral. You haven't said, I'm getting this loan to buy this, and here's the VIN, and here's the vehicle identification number, here's the dealer, here's the whatever. They're just loaning money to you without any sort of collateral. You're going to pay a higher interest rate for that. If you have collateral, if it's for something that they can repossess, if things really got screwed up, then you're going to get a much lower loan, much cheaper loan. So again, that gets back to this housing thing. Do you want to build your own home? During that construction process, that home is a liability. You can look on the books. If you ever look on MLS, you'll see more than you would think in terms of like semi-half constructed homes that are just almost worthless because they're going to get ruined by the weather, and nobody wants to buy them. Nobody's, they're just not a good investment for the bank. So until they are actually a home that's been inspected and livable, they don't offer any collateral to the bank. Once you get them inspected and they're there's whatever checked out as a livable home, now you've got collateral, and now you can get a loan with a much cheaper rate because the bank has got some security there. Let's say you want to be a convenience user of credit cards. What that means is you're going to pay off those credit cards every. I'm going to push it up here. Sorry. You're going to pay off those loans every month. You're not going to carry a balance. If you do that, then under terms of most of them, you won't have to pay any interest at all. So they won't be making any money off of you. And you still get your miles and all that. If you default on an automobile loan, are they going to call you and say, hey, we're going to come repossess the car? No, they just come and take it. So that's why car loans in particular are pretty good rates, because they've got pretty good protection. They're collateralized loans. They've got some recourse, and they've got laws behind them that will allow them just to get out there and take it. Remember the different kinds of bankruptcy? Chapter 7 is like they take everything kind of. Chapter 13 is generally the like a wage earner plan, where they say, no, you're not going to default. You're not going to leave everybody hanging here. We're going to come up with a structured plan, and you'll probably get to keep more of your stuff this way, but you're going to pay these people. So
is it on chapters 1?
What's that?
Is it chapters 1 through 13, or did you just skip?
Oh, on the book?
No, for the test.
For the test.
Is it on chapters 1 through 13, or is it just what you selected?
Yeah, what I've selected here, because there's some jumping around in here, but we will have covered everything. But on bankruptcy, though, the chapter 7, though, that's not a book thing. That's it. Chapter 7 that's the chapter of the bankruptcy code that deals with this. And there's other chapters, but chapter 11, chapter whatever for business type stuff. But for consumers, 7 and 13 are the general ones. General bankruptcy, chapter 7. 13 is the wage earner plan. So if you do 7, you got to come up with a list, and guess what? They decide what you get to keep. What about small claims court? What's kind of unique on that? No lawyers involved, right? And that's what makes it cheaper and better in most cases. But dangerous thing in this state, though, because they can say, you know what? I want to go to full superior court, and they can do that. They can opt for it, and you thought you were getting in on a small time thing. And anyway, what about service contracts? Are they a good deal? According to the book answer, in real life, really they do. They're expensive, and they have so many exclusions. like I said, the one case I could have used it, it would not have worked. It would not have taken my TV back because it fell off the wall, and that wasn't normal wear and tear. Cell phone things, most of the time they won't cover loss. If they do, they're going to be a little more expensive. But anyway, you got to search around, but in general cases. Arbitration and mediation, what's the difference between those two? Mediation is just kind of, okay, let's get together and talk. We're going to have kind of a big boy in the room, and he's going to keep us from fighting and all that stuff, but it's not binding, so not a whole lot of value. Arbitration, on the other hand, that is. Same setup, same sort of judge in the room, but now he's making a judgment. He's not a judge in this capacity. He's probably a retired guy. He's getting paid a fee, but you've agreed to arbitration, and therefore you've agreed to abide by his judgment, and it's binding. So that's the difference. Class action lawsuits, again, consumer issues. Generally, it's something where you've been kind of sort of damaged. The airbags in the car are been known to be defective, and your car is not worth as much because those airbags are in it, and you can't really sue the car company. You could, but you don't have the resources, the time, everything else. But a lawyer out there will get everybody who owns those cars or those airbags and come to you and say, hey, you've been harmed. Sign up with me, give up your rights to sue individually, and you'll become part of this class, and we'll take them on together. So it happens quite a bit in consumer stuff. Yep. So several people with the same problem, basically. You can't opt in that thing if you're driving riding a bike or something. You got to have that vehicle with that problem. You got to be in that class. We talked about different kinds of ownership in terms of generally apartments or rental things. Again, when we're talking types of ownerships here. The building may look exactly the same, but generally apartments or rental things. Condominiums, like I say, you own from the paint inside, and then cooperative type things, you would own more of the property in a shared sort of sense. But if you're just owning the individual housing unit, that's a condominium. And then the last thing we talked about, generally it's a real estate transaction term, the term earnest money, and it still exists, it's still there, and the term that they're saying, why do you do it? Because basically it shows good faith. It shows that you're serious, and so if you're buying a home, expect to, the salesperson will square you away. They'll let you know, but for most of you, it's probably going to be around $3,000 that you're going to have available, just to show that you're not, just some homeless person who's out there. So, questions on that? Questions on the exam? I think I will have paper copies of the test available, but I'll probably also have it because I've already got it in Blackboard for the other part of the course. So if you choose to take it that way, you can bring a laptop with you to class. You can log on to Blackboard and take it the automated way. I've got a new thing called ZipGrade where you'll do the answer sheet. It's kind of like a Scantron, but it's graded right with my phone. So either way, you'll get the results back the same night. Any questions?
After the test, we stay for chapter 10.
What's that?
After the test is over, we go over.
Yeah, we'll have a little bit more time. Yeah. Question? Yes.
Blackboard is running login right now because I have to fix it with IT. But if it's not done by next week, is it possible to email you or something?
Yeah, that would work. Yeah, and don't sweat it. If you got a Blackboard issue, then yeah, we'll work it out. As long as I know, just email me and then you'll submit it via Blackboard. It's just real nice at the end of the term when everything's on Blackboard because it's in your interest. Yeah, we'll work it out. Not a big deal.